Welcome to the Accreditation Audit Committee of the June 2025. So thank you all for being here. And we have kind of a short agenda. We have two programs to vote on, Lindsey Wilson College and Eastern Kentucky University. And their documents were inside the folders. Really, it's just the folders from CAPE. And Jennifer, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think both Lindsey Wilson College and EKU had no AFIs or stipulations. So that's very, very exciting to have that happen. So so yeah, we're very happy for them. So I think the vote will be easy in those cases. And then I did ask, I know our agenda shows Ashley coming at 11, but I didn't think it would take us long to vote on programs that had no concerns from CAPE. So she is ready for me to text her, and then she will need a few minutes to transition, but then we don't have to take a break. So that's kind of what we have going on there. But I do not lead this meeting. It goes to the chair. So Dr. Bay Williams, I'll have her lead it. And I don't think we have to do introductions because we've all know each other from previous meetings. So anyway, so I think we're good there. But Dr. Bay Williams, I'll pass it off to you. Oh, you're muted.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here for this meeting. Let's see. Melissa, would you pop the agenda in the chat? I apologize, but I just came out of a meeting, so I don't have it at my fingertips.
Thought it might be easier just to share it because then everybody can see it. So there it is.
Okay. Well, as you all know, Melissa is like always like holding my hand through all these processes to make sure that we're on point and moving along efficiently. So thank you. Okay, so welcome everyone. And then the first item of business is the approval of the minutes from December 10th. So take a look at those and I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second, Kesey. Sorry.
Are you getting down who this is, or should I be writing this down?
I am. I'm writing it down.
Perfect. And then I'm looking for a second.
Second, Kesey.
All right. And then you can enter in the chat the approval. So you just enter I approve or not approve. So we have approvals for the minutes. Thank you very much. And the next thing is to sort of start with the end in mind. Get our December meeting on your calendars. So please open up your calendars. And if we were to follow the idea that we have this month, it would be something like a Monday morning, like the 15th or the 8th. So I'm just going to put, yeah, so the floor is open.
Switch away from Mondays. That would be better for me.
Okay. How about a Tuesday?
Tuesday is great. It just seems that all of my standing meetings have been getting switched to Mondays.
Same.
And just to give you all a heads up, we have two program approvals and a BRESHA update. So it's exactly the same agenda, just different schools that we're approving.
If we do Tuesdays, I would need to do Tuesday afternoons.
Okay. A Tuesday afternoon. So are we talking about like okay, so yeah, well, let's leave it at that for right now. If it's a Tuesday afternoon, is that problematic for any other committee members?
No.
All right, so then we're talking about how soon in December to do it. We could do the 2nd, 9th, or 16th. I'll start with the 2nd. December 2nd at say 2 o'clock.
I can do that.
That's our last week of classes, so I'll probably have a team meeting. I teach all day on Tuesdays. So maybe the 9th or the 16th would work better for me.
Okay, let's move to the 9th.
9th is good for me.
The 9th is good for me.
Works for me.
Perfect. So the 9th at, I just randomly said 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock
That's great.
Eastern time, 1 o'clock Central time. All
Sounds
right.
good.
Melissa, you can get that invite out to us to hold a
I
2-hour
will do
block.
that.
Perfect. Well, moving right along, 8 minutes ahead of schedule. We are now ready for the program review approval of Lindsay Wilson College. Melissa, I'm sorry that I don't know this, but is there a protocol I'm supposed to be going through and asking questions?
No, we can just, you just, that's it. If you, does anybody have any questions or concerns in looking at anything in the folder? Like I said, like there's a lot, like when they have a perfect evaluation, it's kind of hard to have much to worry about.
So the motion needed for approval
Yep.
is approval without conditions? Is that
Like it's, yeah, it's just approval of Lindsay Wilson's
okay?
programs.
Move that we approve approve the program for Lindsay Wilson College.
Second, Kesey.
All right, so this is the Lindsay Wilson. So it's been moved and seconded. Do we have any discussion? All right, then please enter your vote.
And then Dr. Neal, I think, will be abstaining since it's her college.
All right, so we have our 3 votes. How many voting members do we think we have?
Yeah, we only need 3 for the
Perfect.
vote. That's why I needed at least 4
there's
people
another,
because
yeah, 4. Sorry, 4. So we had the 4. All right. Well,
yes, thank you.
Congratulations to Lindsay Wilson College on their wonderful review, their extraordinary review, and our committee concurs. Or it's a support vote, right? We're not really the decision makers. We're just offering our approval.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to Eastern Kentucky University. And I will take a motion.
So moved for approval.
Second, Kesey.
And I'm seeing a second from, I don't know, Jennifer or Kesey.
Kesey, fine, sure.
Sure.
My job today.
Okay, and discussion. Okay, that's my wait time. Here we go for your vote. All right, there we go. Congratulations to EKU on their excellent review. I just have this sidebar wondering, and that is that, and Jennifer, you might speak to this or whatever, but we, besides just going in and looking at it, we don't really get to hear like any highlights ourselves. Would we want to in December, like pause for a minute for somebody like Jennifer to like share some highlights that were part of their review process? Is this something that would be of interest? It feels, like just voting on it seems kind of not as informative, but of course that's our role. So it just occurred to me that it'd be kind of fun to hear a little update. So I guess we could informally have, do we have our EKU person here?
We do not.
But I guess I can informally ask Jennifer to share some highlights from their program review, or we just move on to the next item on the agenda.
No, it's fine. So Ashley is going to be on her way. I did text her, so it's fine. No rush. I will say that we've changed the program review process in the future. You guys will actually have a final report. All the ones that have moved forward, there's a final report that kind of has everything laid out as their highlights. So in the future, that will be there. So, but yeah, Dr. Neal, do you want to share some awesome things about you all? I know you had a lot of work you've done the last several years, so good opportunity to say great things.
First, I just want to thank you all because I've learned a lot through this process, but you all have been such an amazing support system. And I don't think that we would have done as well without the questions we've asked and the answers we've received and just the collaboration. I came in as a third grade teacher in our first accreditation with CAPE, and it was a mess, and I knew nothing. And here we are 8 years later, and we have no AFIs. And it's pretty amazing. And the feeling, the team that we've built is really strong, and we've learned a lot. We didn't have rubrics. We didn't have case study. We didn't have, several of the things that they had required. And so over the years, we've built all of those pieces. And to come out on this side with no AFIs, with strong case study results, with continued strong partnerships, we had a solid foundation, and we produced good teachers. But CAPE requires a totally different set of skills than some of the things that NCATE had required. And so to come in as a novice and to lead this team to such success has been incredibly stressful, but also really wonderful at the same time. And I do see the value in the process. We do have, and it's funny because my husband said to me when I got the report, he said, they couldn't come up with anything to tell you to do. And I wanted to punch him, like I literally wanted to hit him. I said, I have a list of things that we will improve on. Nobody really needs to tell your program what you need to improve on when you know what you're doing. So I just really appreciate every one of you and the collaboration that we have in this state and the support that we have. So thank you.
Well, your smile says a lot. It is a lot. And just your journey in those years from the last review to this review, it's quite an accomplishment. I mean, you're throwing a lot of credit to the group, but it's that day in, day out working on all those pieces that got you the results that you received. So congratulations to you. Anybody else have any comments?
Congratulations.
I will say too, when we get to this point, I feel like I'm always like, and they have no AFIs and they did great, or they have one AFI. And it sounds so simple, but just, being the state person who sits and watches literally every accreditation, the work that is going on leading up to it, and then the work in the visit, you don't sleep the whole time. You're up all night doing all this. So I just, I really want to highlight anytime I can that while it sounds simple when we're like, thank you, it was awesome, we approve, and sometimes gives people the wrong impression when there's not a lot of AFIs and stipulations. It's like, well, they just slide through. No, the work that it takes to get to that point is it's significant. It's a lot, as you know, those of us in the meeting know. But just to highlight for anybody who watches, it's a lot of work, and it's very admirable, especially for those of you that are leaders that have to lead this work. It's very challenging, and yeah,
I
you
will
all should
say,
be commended.
I will say this, last January when I was finishing writing the report and we didn't have a data manager and we didn't have all the things, and I got COVID, and then a couple weeks later I got the flu, and then we had to write our program review report. I wrote for hours and hours and hours, like 14 hours, 15 hours a day. And the team would send me things and I would write because I've had, I've been there the whole time. But that was arduous. That whole process is so arduous. And I tell Melissa and I tell my team I'm a gold star girly. And my president said, well, you're going to have AFIs. And I was like, I'm going to try not to, because that's who I am. But there was a lot of nights in January that I didn't sleep, a lot of weekends that people, it goes unnoticed. And the team was the same. And it's just a lot. It's a lot.
Mhm.
But I'm really thankful.
Well, Dr. Bay Williams, if you're ready, I will let Ashley in. And hopefully you all had an opportunity to look through her stuff. She'll do her presentation, and then we'll have time for you guys to ask questions. Hello, Dr. Holland. Are you there? Is your sound working?
I think so.
It is good. Okay, I'm going
Perfect.
to mute and let Dr. Bay Williams and you kind of run the last part of the show. Thank you for jumping on early. I knew
No
our agenda
problem.
would go quick, but maybe
That's
we'll
okay.
adjust December's because it just doesn't take that long. So, okay, thanks all.
Well, hi, Ashley. Thank you for joining us. I'm just going to turn it over to you to share some things, and then the committee has looked at what you submitted and we're listening, and then we'll, have Q&A afterwards.
Perfect. Do I have permissions to share my screen?
You should. It's up
Okay.
on the top. Do you see?
Okay. Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'm not
Perfect.
used to Teams. I'm a Zoom girl. You have to ignore my cow in the background. All right. Hand drawn by my oldest son. Okay, so I have just a very brief presentation. You don't want to see this one, do you? Let's change. Sorry. Technical difficulties on my part. Here we go. Yeah. I can't get you guys back up. There we go. Now I think I'm ready. Okay, I'm ready. You should be seeing a slide that just is the beginning. It says Brushy University School of Education. Okay, I see some heads nodding. Perfect. All right, so just a quick, real quick, brief overview. I'm not sure how often this committee changes. I do believe that I see some new faces as well. So just a very quick overview, just to brush it itself. So we're actually celebrating 100 years this year. So we are extremely excited to celebrate that huge milestone, especially for a small private school. We began in 1925 as Mount St. Joseph Junior College for Women. We then began in 46 offering some courses here in Owensboro. So what we refer to as the Mount is actually in Maple Mount, or out West Louisville, if you're familiar with this particular area. But they brought some of those courses to downtown Owensboro. In 1950, Brushy College was established. And then in 98, Brushy College became Brushy University. And we are in still somewhat at the same geographical location as we were back in 46 when we started offering courses here in downtown Owensboro. We have grown a little bit, but as you know, when you are in downtown anything, you can only grow so much in space. So the School of Education, our enrollment overall is right around 900 students. We represent 43 states, 21 countries, have over 30 majors, and we are divided into 6 divisions / schools. With our newest program being physician's assistants that will start admitting students next fall. Next fall, as in fall of 26, not this coming fall. So the School of Education is actually housed in the CE Field Center for Professional Studies. We are actually one of the newer buildings here on campus. We are on the corner of 9th and Frederica. We house the School of Social Work, the School of Business, and the School of Education. We also have classrooms, auditoriums, access to student study space. It is also one of our hubs for our community events. The School of Education currently has between 60 and 70 current majors, not necessarily admitted into our programs, but definitely have declared education as a major and is going through that process. We actually host 3 different early registration events before each fall, one in April, one in June, and one in July. We, of course, have already had our April and Junes with some of our higher number of attendees overall for Berkshire University. Our April was one of our higher events for students who are interested in education. So I'm excited to see what July brings us as well. So again, just more of an overview of the School of Education, the faculty and staff. This is a lot of information, but as you can tell that our faculty and staff have changed. We are a very small but mighty team. We started out when I first came here with 4 full-time faculty members, 2 full-time staff members, and then we use several adjuncts for a lot of our classes. We are currently at 3 full-time faculty and 1 part-time staff person. We also utilize our adjuncts as well, but not as many as we did whenever I first came in 2015 is when I came. The diversity among our students in the School of Education and here at Brescia, we have some non-traditional students, several student athletes, which makes up the majority of our population. We have diversity in ethnicity and race. We do have transfer students. We have a transfer agreement with the community college here in Owensboro, Henderson Community College, and I believe they are working on one in E-Town. We have international students. We have Vietnamese sisters who are also visiting and are completing degrees in integrated studies with education as part of their degree program. All of those leading to initial certification in either elementary, middle school, combination of 2 different content areas. Our dual certification with special ed has to be partnered with elementary or middle school with a single content area. We do have secondary education with areas of biology, English, math, and social studies. We do have a P12 art program. We have discontinued since our last visit our P12 Spanish program, and we just completed the teach out of our ESL endorsement program just this spring. In the School of Education, we like to use this motto or our mission where we say our students are challenged to become professional educators committed to these 4 pillars, is what I like to refer to them as: ethics, advocacy, service, and lifelong learning. We build our foundation on these 4 virtues: the respect for the sacred, devotion to learning, growth in virtue, and servant leadership. This is also the mission and the core for Brescia University. Then we know that we are built on our teacher standards and expectations. Then we have our 4 pillars, which we refer to as our dispositions, that help our students become better educators and servers of our community, and overall that builds our professional educator as they graduate from Brescia University. Just to celebrate, we all like to celebrate, and sometimes those are hard, not that they're hard to celebrate, but sometimes it's a little hard to brag on some things. But as far as our unit and our program strengths, our #1 strength is our relationships. And we believe relationships are intertwined in all of the following things in our our interactions, whether we are teaching or we are mentoring, in advising. And our advising, of course, happens once each spring, but good advising happens all the time for us. Students stop by and see us. They talk to other faculty members. We are definitely not territorial when it comes to whose advisor is who. Oftentimes it'll spark a different conversation, and that gives us another avenue to learn or to help our students understand their program or the profession itself. Brusha does have a care team that we can contact if we have a true concern about a student. They will then contact that identified care team and see if there are other concerns that are coming from other courses. We do post-observation reflections with all of our students that we see out in the field. We started implementing doing observations through our methods courses and not waiting until they get to practicum or to student teach before we go out and see them in the field. We actually started that in our methods courses. So they go see each student in a methods course at least once each semester. That starts with a lesson plan, the observation, and then a post-observation reflection. Our practicum and student teachers have daily reflections where we communicate with them daily. We try our very best to move away from just sending an email or a text. We want to try to make it as fluid as possible so that they can see the connection. So they actually start like a Google Doc with us. They communicate on their reflections daily. We're able to go in, read those, and then also add our input into those. It allows us also to look for any common misconceptions or concerns or even some celebrations. And sixth, we always like to call it just keeping it real. And I think the last statement that we've all taught in the P12 schools help us do that. We teach from experience. We understand that we can teach all that we can in a classroom, but until we get our students out into the field, it's just not real yet. I always say it sounds great when we're talking about having a class of 16 or 15, but I got lucky and had that my first year. But outside of that, that's been the only year that I've had a class that small. Some of the changes that we've had in the last academic year. So I have some examples, but just to give you the overview, we have implemented the watermark data system. We have went into a contract with them last year, and I can share with you, and I put that also in my report, how we got to where we are today. So I would love to have purchased it and then just taken off with it, but there was a lot of training and a lot of back work that went into it. This also made us take a deeper dive, which we were already doing, but an even deeper than what we were doing, dive into our assessment to review that and then to align it, look at what standards we were aligning to. And instead of trying to align to every single standard, really focusing in on which standards we felt met the needs and matched what we were looking for or expecting out of each assessment. We have clearly identified data days. Instead of just making them part of every one of our meetings, there are some things that we do talk about at every one of our department meetings. But then at the end of each semester, we are designating some days as just data review and what trends that we can see from that. The university itself has adopted a new gen ed program that has required the School of Education to review their program requirements from the university standpoint, and then being proactive in conversations about national accreditation. So with the national accreditation, we were actually, Melissa and I met with one of the national accreditors last week. Yesterday is only Monday. Last week, at where we are as an institution with a national accreditor, there are some things that we are going to be doing in this next year that will help us continue to work towards that. So moving forward, I don't know what you all get to see from my last report in December, but from my report in December, these were some of the goals that we had at that point, and I just wanted to give a quick update on where we were with each one of those. So continuing or working with high quality instructional resources, that is an ongoing. I feel that probably will always be ongoing. We also took 3 of our courses and combined it into one course, our school art methods, our drama or theater appreciation, and then music for classroom teachers. We combined that into one course that is actually called Comprehensive Arts in the Classroom. Has been approved and is part of our curriculum. Exploring, maintaining connections and collaboration with professional organizations. That is also an ongoing. I think as we explore those, we find ones that will be more beneficial to our students and to our program, and then that allows us to transition from certain programs to newer programs or different programs that meet our needs. Aligning evaluations with the Danielson framework or the Kentucky framework for teaching. We have completed that for our spring courses and are in the process of working on our fall courses. Explore and utilize information and resources on the Academic Standards website. Again, ongoing as things are updated or as we get in and start clicking on different things and experience different things. We like to share those with our students, but that would be an ongoing task. And then move data collection and storage to an outside provider. So in the last academic year, and at the point of this particular report in December, we were in the process of our training with Watermark. So the contract had been written, signed, paid for, right? And we had started our trainings. So looking forward, some of the things that we are working on this summer and this fall, we're going to continue with those high quality instructional resources and making sure that those are identified in our courses and our students are using those in practice as they're going out into the field. We're going to continue with exploring those professional organizations as we see the needs of our students and our programs change. Again, stay up to date with those resources on the Academic Standards website. And then the last 2 are kind of a previous one, but kind of broken into 2 different avenues. So we are partnered with Watermark, and we would like to make sure that we are using Watermark to its full capacity in collecting and disaggregating data to make those driving decisions for our programs. And then on the flip side of that, on the flip side of the reporting of that, we want to make sure that it's meaningful to the students. We want to make sure that we're helping our students use Watermark to build their portfolio, to demonstrate and to help them feel more confident across the standards. So again, it's one tool that helps us with our programming, but we also don't want it to be just something else that the students have to do or they have to purchase or they have to upload. But it's going to be a tool that they are going to be able to use outside of their program here. So that was an absolute crash course, and I'm going to give you a little bit more details and show you a couple of things that we have been working on. But as you can see, and I'll be more than happy to drop this into that drive, or Melissa, if you want, I can send it to you and you can drop it into that drive. But here's all of our contact information. Now, Sister Betsy is here. She is part-time over the summer. Well, she's part-time period, but she is here over the summer. Myself, Renee, and Mike are not here over the summer, but we know how that goes. We all 3 check our emails. So if you need something, please feel free to email us. You can give us a call. My office phone number will ring a couple of times, makes a funny click, and then sends it over to my cell phone. So, but if you need something more immediate, Sister Betsy is here over the summer. So, questions
Yes,
so far?
actually,
Yeah.
if you want to email that to me, I'll make sure AAC that'll go into the update drive. So if you want to email me your presentation, that'd be great.
Okay. Perfect. So some things that I would like to share with you is, let me make sure I am clicking on the right item. Here we go. Again, a funny looking cow. I referred to Watermark, and I have kept track of all of our meetings that we have had, starting with just exploring what Watermark might do for Brescia, what their goals are. I know that they have about 6 different options that you can purchase, if you will, and we did some exploration and we found out that the student learning and licensure was what we would benefit us the most. So as you can see, there's a lot of training that went on. And as the trainings were completed, Brescia went through and we started looking at our evaluations so that when we put it into Watermark, it wasn't an overwhelming, well, we have all of this, now what do we do with it? That's not what our goal was. Our goal was to make sure that we kept very focused throughout all of our evaluations. And as you get closer to the bottom, we did have some check-ins in January. Our students did not start using this until January. And by using it in January, they were informed that they have an account. So there wasn't input of information on the student's part. So even though we have some check-in stuff, it was more check-in on our part of how to put students in, how to align rubrics, how to build activities, all of that part of it. And as we got towards the end of April, I went through all of the trainings. Sister Betsy did not go through all of the trainings. There were some that were not pertinent to what her specific role would be. But I met with Sister Betsy to review some of the things we did at the beginning of the training with Watermark, so that as she starts preparing things for fall, it's a little bit more fresh and she would have the chance to actually have hands-on. Again, as they did their training, there were some of the things that we didn't have. We didn't have our roster for spring. We didn't have our placements for spring as far as our methods courses. So until you get some of that information, it was in theory. And then as we got to the end of May in this last 2 sections here was when I met with the other 2 faculty members and we looked at their rubrics that they had already built. And then we started going into the system, the Watermark system, and tagging, if you will, each one of the criteria for their evaluations so that we could start pulling some of that data. There's one meeting that has been scheduled that is not on this. We actually have a post-graduation meeting scheduled for the nope, just kidding, the 18th with Watermark. So this will be to help answer any questions, I guess, that we have, but it was an allotted 15 minutes, so I don't think they're going to tell me anything crazy new. One of the other, sorry, I've got to make that smaller. Can't see. Oh, just kidding. Oh, oh, there it is. Okay. So some of the reports that we can pull, I had pulled a couple of reports. When I like it that we can save reports. So this is just my end of the semester spring report. I have 2 different queries that I ran. I ran all of CAPE standards, and then I also pulled out just the methods courses. And again, this is data just for spring. This is when we started truly implementing Watermark. We've scored assignments in here. I've pulled the data. We've had brief discussions about the data, but more are planned for over the summer. But I always love graphics. I think it's easy for my either it's this or this brain to see. So it gives me the breakdown of each of the CAPE standards. And I can pull this on any of the standards that are or evaluations, sorry, are aligned to. So I can-
Ashley,
Yes.
can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
How does this relate to the data that you have? For example, the evidence that you have for the in-task method standards that's linked at the bottom of the first question or the first category of questions. It's sort of page 3 of the document that you shared with us.
Okay. So
I mean, you can answer that later, but as you're talking
Okay.
about that,
No,
if
you're
there
fine.
seems to be an overlap with that data, maybe that other data is older, or maybe it's the same, but you, anyways.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Can I come back to that question?
Sure.
Okay, perfect. Let me go back here. Um, okay, so I can pull out different standards. If I would like to, you'll see that I have nothing for standards 6 and 7. But what I can also do is it gives me a beautiful chart, which sometimes my brain thinks that way as well, so that we can pull that data. If I just want to look at standard 1, I have that data. And that was one of the bigger challenges for us, was the organization of data, and being able to pull data quickly and focused, so that we didn't have a plethora of data and was unsure of what to do with it, or how to organize it. So I want to come back to your question. So this should be, I just clicked on the methods courses. So this is actually according to INTAS standards. So that was a different report. That was actually this report. And can you repeat your question? I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. And it's always hard for the reader because you know all the stuff and then you're reporting on pieces, but we're reading the pieces and trying to like also have that like that big picture piece, at least for
Sure.
me. So as you're sharing this looks different than the evidence that you put in that, first section. That evidence shows up at I think it's kind of the top of page 3. So, and you might have said this, so I'm sorry if you did, but it seems like the one that you just had, that is the one that is at the bottom of that first section, is reporting on the results from a methods assignment. And then what you're just sharing there in terms of the standards, is that from like a student teaching observation? Like, how are they related to each other? Or is one just a newer version of an older assessment? Do you know what I'm asking?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Hang on. I'm gonna get there. I'm
Okay,
gonna
so
pull it.
what you were just sharing with the graphs, like you said, like
Yeah.
that's illustrative, that's, helps to analyze and look at it and that sort of thing. What was the task that students did in which this data was pulled?
Oh, okay. Now I understand. I understand your question. So the methods courses. Okay, so one of the methods courses was math for elementary teachers. And I know this is a lot of clicking. Okay, so the assignment for the math for elementary teachers was, oops, sorry, too many buttons. Was a lesson plan, was a targeted lesson plan. So they had to do some assessment of a student, see where they were, look for somewhere where they are struggling, and then they had to analyze that data set, pick out that challenging area for student, and then develop a plan to help that student improve in that area. They also had to give a presentation to their peers in class. Is that what you're asking?
I'm sort of, but I feel like that's what I saw in the report. So, because you have a link to the assignment for math
Yes.
methods,
Yes.
and then you have the data at the end that you analyzed. I'm having trouble, so I'm just thinking again from my, my own experience. So I could just be missing this piece. But when you're pulling that data, it's coming from a single course or it's coming from 3 courses and getting average. Like, what's the connection? Like with those graphs, the graphs that you just showed us, is that coming from the math methods, or did it come from student teaching, or did it come from like a collection of things?
Now I understand what you're asking. Gotcha. So that is, where'd my screen go?
I don't
That,
know. The rest of you chime in here, because it could, if it's just my confusion, I just want you to move on. But it's interesting data, but having the context for what it was,
yeah,
what the students were doing when they were assessed, I think is something I'm missing.
absolutely. So what I probably should do, and this is good so that I remember to do it next time. So in that first set of data, on my evidence section, it's these methods courses. So what I need to do is, what I didn't do and what I should have done is linked the assignment for each one of those methods classes. So again, I know that 323 is math methods for elementary, 325 is English language arts for elementary, 327 is literacy, and 336 is methods, LBD methods. So they're all methods courses, the how-tos that we offer in the spring.
Hey, Ashley,
Yes.
if you want to do those links, this is like, since this is just an update, they're not really voting on anything. If you want to do those links, and then I can upload the additional things just so we have it on record. Same
Okay.
with any assignments, rubrics, lesson plan templates, any of those things that might be helpful for the committee to be able to speak to. If you wanted to hyperlink any of that in, I can always update that in the folder.
Okay.
And Jenny, I don't know if that would be helpful, but I thought I'd just throw out there that we could do that.
Of course. I
Yes,
mean, all of us are curious. Like Jennifer, when she was talking about her program, was saying, it's a great help to be part of a network in Kentucky as we, try to help each other out with our program data analysis. But still, and I feel like I just want you to move on because I know you have a lot to share. But just since you have this called up, see where it says you have 83.3%, 15 out of 18 of evaluations. So does that mean that you have 18 students in 323 and that's where you got the data from that assignment? Or did you have like 5 students and across those 4 courses you ended up with, they all evaluated standard 1 and you pulled the data from all of those and put them together? Like, I'm having trouble mapping the assignment to the results. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
And it's interesting, right? Because I feel like if you were averaging them, let's say you have, Mike or whatever, and Mike was maybe proficient in like 3 of the 4 courses, but not the other course. Like, how do you manage that? I don't expect you to answer that, but these are the dilemmas that we have in our own work. Is when you're assessing across multiple programs, at what point is a student considered proficient? Is it based on that assignment or is it an overall? So anyways, that's why I'm curious, because it's that mapping of the assignment to the, to the assessment to, because it's a point in time assessment, right?
Yes.
Or if you're averaging all those together, it's not just point in time. It's like overall, we decide that this is our proficiency rating because we averaged the scores across these 4 methods courses. But that's just not as explicit to me in reading the review. So anyways, does that make sense?
It does make sense. So
I think what's missing for me was the rubrics for the individual assignments and those, how they are aligned to the standard. Because if you're pulling those from multiple assessments, so what rubric, you pulled up a lesson plan and what you were asking them to do. How are you scoring that? And how is your rubric, if you're using the rubric, aligned to the standards?
Okay. And we have, and this is actually had them scanned because they go in with our minutes. And this is our working copy. So when we go into meetings and we have notes that we have taken. So sorry, I'm going to scroll back up. Sugar. But this is part of our, we are so small. We have had the challenge of just talking about it, but not noting it anywhere. So it might be something that we pop into someone else's office and, hey, what do you think about this? So we just have some working documents that we share, and they're just shared with handwritten notes on them. So, I mean, this, of course, would be something that I would clean up, but again, it's a work in progress for us. And this is how we work through it. This is how we aligned each of our classes and each of our rubrics. It's not pretty. We can make it pretty, but it's real. And this is what we have done. So we do have to show how we've had the conversation and the work side of it as well. But I want to go back to the question about how do we know which class? And that's one of my questions for Watermark. I don't know how to do this because this is new for us, and using this and pulling the data, using this to pull the data. It's one of those things, I know it's there, but I need their help of how to get to it. When I go to whether it's met or not met, it gives me the class and it gives me the student as well, of what was met and what was not met. So that's not a clear, definite response to one of your concerns or questions. But I feel like I could get that somewhere else, but I just don't know where yet. I can always pull just an individual for a class. Tell me how everybody did on standard 1 for each individual class, or I can pull a report just for elementary as well. So some of the courses that we refer to as our Common Core courses, we try to look at them holistically because they might come in as an elementary ed major. And then by the time they go into a methods course, they've changed to special ed middle school. So at that point, they're going to take a different route in their classes, but they all have the same Common Core classes. So that may be something that I need to do, is identify just my elementary methods classes, middle school methods classes, and so forth. I think one of my other concerns was with looking at data for some of our programs. We don't have the number of students enrolled in that program. Like our special ed and elementary have the highest enrollment. Our middle, well, actually our P12 art has the lowest enrollment, but right there with it is our middle school program. So pulling some of that data, I would have to go back maybe 10 plus years to get much data. Also, our cycles of data are not going to go by semester. It will be by academic year, because what we offer in the fall, we offer every fall, in the same way with the spring. So in order to see any kind of trends or patterns, we would need 3 academic years to be able to do that well. This is another report that I've used that I particularly like. It's a printout basically of, sorry, it's probably small because of the way I have it. A printout of what you saw a while ago as far as any of the numbers. So this just gives me some raw data. It's not clickable, but I do like that I can go to particular standards. So it is a little bit more user friendly if you're not used to watermark itself, but this would also give a hard copy report as well. So what I hear is linking the assignments and rubrics. I heard the word rubric. To, okay. And Melissa, I will get that. Melissa, do you want me to just start a new document and do those links just like in a document, or do you want me to go in and edit?
I think if you want
Okay.
to, we can kind of treat it, and you know, anybody in this meeting can tell me how you think it'd be best for you to look at it. But we can almost treat it like an addendum or an onsite, where you just kind of like have a separate doc that has the things that were added since then, since they've reviewed that. That way they know. But if the committee thought it would be easier to see it in relation, I'm happy, you know, she can go back in and put it in relation to the report. So do any of the committee members have a opinion?
I think either a new document highlighting changes that we haven't seen since your last update, or even just, you know, highlighting it within the original document if you don't want to create a new one. And I think going forward, the committee membership is pretty solid. We don't have much change, so you can omit the overview of the college and, you know, kind of the generalities at the beginning of your presentation, because most of us are familiar with that, having reviewed it before.
That's good advice. I was just looking at your timeline. And we just finished our accreditation with no areas for improvement. I was telling them in 2017, we had a very large amount of areas for improvement. And so I started in 2017 creating rubrics, creating case studies, doing all of the things, creating new data sets, creating a new data storage system, all of those things. And your timeline is short. So one of the things that I'm just going to recommend that I did, you have these guiding questions here. So when you're talking to us next time, I would just use those guiding questions and speak to each one of them. How are you meeting each one of those guiding questions? What are you doing? And so when you're talking, give your data for each one of those guided questions. And then talk about what does that mean to your department? Because when I started, we had 3 people as well. And so that's just something I was telling them, without the collaboration of everyone, we wouldn't have gotten to where we are this year. And so those are just some things that I have learned over the years and some things that might help you. But when you're presenting next time, or you're writing your report, those guiding questions, take that guiding question and then answer that question, because I know it's in your report, but when you're presenting, that solidifies any questions that the assessors have in their mind, because you might have it written there, but writing is not, you know, it's objective. I can take it one way, but if you're presenting that I've written this, but here is also my data and what we do with it.
Thank you.
And Ashley Sue had put a question in the chat, so I'll just
Oh, sorry.
ask. No, I know you can't see it, especially when you're sharing, but it just said, what is the timeline for students uploading key assessments to Watermark to complete the three cycles of data?
So they have to upload 2 weeks prior to finals week. They can upload before then, but our 3 cycles of data will have to be 3 academic years.
So that will start in the fall, or do you have, using what you have so far, like, are you in the first one or you haven't started yet at all?
We started this semester.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically 3 years from now, you'll
Yes.
be done.
I think when we looked at Watermark itself, we were thinking that we would be able to at least get even just a cohort into Watermark in the fall, and those were big dreams. So we have a better data set this spring.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Ashley, was that so the presentation is done, correct? I just want to know before
Yes.
okay.
Yes. Sorry.
I
Sorry.
assumed that because you quit sharing, but you know what happens when you assume. So I think now we just open it up to I know the committee's kind of been asking questions throughout, but I also know that they may have taken notes when they originally looked at your stuff. So we'll open that
Sure.
up if any committee members have any questions.
I would say not a question so much, just as a note of caution. You mentioned adopting several new programs at one time to kind of try and address this. I think in any area, sometimes if you adopt too many new things, then you're chasing compliance with all of those new programs and learning about those. I hope that it's not too much for you to accomplish learning the new programs that the College of Ed instituted, and then what you've chosen to make the progress necessary on any one avenue, if that makes sense.
Could you clarify what you mean by new programs?
You said that you had chosen a new program to try and help you track your compliance with the different areas, and that you went to training for that one.
Yes. So that's the Watermark system.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the College of Ed adopted a different one.
No,
Okay.
it's the same one. It's the same one.
Okay, I must have misunderstood. Okay.
Sorry. Well, I
That's
did
okay.
talk about the adoption of our new GER program, but that's a university-wide.
Okay.
That was a huge task, a 3-year-long task.
Okay.
So it was up to us to adapt our needs with their approval
Gotcha.
without having students stay here for 10 years.
I'm asking the group this question. Is it helpful to go like section by section in sort of the Q&A? All right, so I'm going to just serve as facilitator here. So we're on the first category, which is about the NTAS standards related to learner development, learning differences, the learning environment that we've kind of been focusing on already. So the floor is open for other questions, suggestions.
I guess I would just reiterate the helpfulness to us to have as to anybody who's evaluating to really have the more specific materials to be able to look at and the connections between your data and, you know, the student work and that kind of thing. Will just be really helpful moving forward, especially, you know, as you're looking at a longer timeline to get 3 cycles of data. As much as you can provide now as far as what you're doing, or, you know, as you move forward, would be really, really helpful.
Yes, and I think seeing the rubrics and how you're scoring your signature assessments or lesson planning or student reflection, specifically how the assessments are being scored and the alignment to the standards for each assessment.
So this might connect to what you're saying, Coletta, but I'm picturing like a table that might have those methods courses and then across the top, which standards they're assessing. It certainly is not an expectation that every course measure every standard, but just that gives sort of a look at where you're pulling the data from.
Yes. And especially for your signature assessments that you mentioned.
Ashley, is the hope that the rubric that you just showed us become embedded in the watermark, you know, assessments so that you're using watermark to upload those assessments? I noticed you had handwritten in like the NTASC connections, which seems like it's a work in progress, which of course is that's what we're here for, you know, but you have those things aligned. So once those are aligned, then they can, you know, become maybe being in the system, offload some of the effort on your part to have to do it in hard copy and then like have to scan it later.
Yes, so actually they're already in Watermark, and that's how I was able to pull those reports. So let's see, let's just go to that math assignment. And this is not going to show this is where it gets a little tricky in Watermark. It doesn't show you the assignment, it shows you the rubric. So here is the rubric that we use for that signature or that key assignment of evaluating a student, making a plan, and then presenting in class. So this is actually what we have set. So these are all of my standards. And let me click this one. It may give you a better view. Okay, so these are all of my standards that connect to that first category or criteria for that rubric. So we have all of our framework is on there, our dispositions, the 4 C's, which I know is a work in progress, but they are there, my friend, they are there. We have our middle school math, we have our CAPE standards, our National Council of Teacher of Mathematics. Too many acronyms in my world, all my NTASC, all of that is right there. So what we have done is, and this is how we get that data. Maybe that's where I'm not as clear. This is how we get that data. So on paper, because we don't all have access to the same thing around here, it's like Fort Knox, right? We print out papers. Yes, I know we love the trees, but it's just the way we have to do it. And that's why I scanned like that's what our meetings look like. Is like, okay, let's think about this. Let's look at our standards. Okay. And then we make our notes. And then I come back and either myself or Sister Betsy will tag them into Watermark. So we input the rubric and then we align to our standards. And then also when we meet as our department and our department meetings, we have to set, okay, what is a met standard for this? Can they be at that level of developing? And that's our expectation of where we could say they've met this. And then that's where that's marked here. So when we do go back and pull that report and we're looking at NTASC standard number 6, and I'm looking at this particular class for it to give me the data that says that they met it, then they have to be over here. They have to score over here in accomplished or exemplary. Does that help? Okay, I see some head shaking and in the right direction. So it is in there, and that's why one of our goals, and I mean we're going to do it, but let's make it a go. That is why our goal for fall, actually for the summer, is to look at our rubrics or our fall classes, have that conversation of what standard is going to meet or align to each one of the criteria of our rubrics. And then that way we can put it into Watermark. So when we score it, we're pulling that data. We're setting the benchmark, but we're also able to see how we met that benchmark.
All right, last call for questions for this first set, this first standard cluster.
Do you feel like you'll have enough data to present for your SSR and for your visit next year?
I won't have even one full cycle.
So how will you handle your SSR and your visit?
I will have to report on previous semesters, but it's not organized in this manner. So I guess my answer should have been yes, but not organized like this.
Okay.
All right, so now we're into the next question, the category of their content knowledge. We're at R12. And you've kind of started to address that when you were showing some of the content standards that you have mapped to, like math methods with the NCTM. And what I would say, just to open, is here's where I really also want to see the evidence. So you have these, courses, you've mentioned the standards, but are they mapped to the assignments, the rubric, and that sort of thing to be able to see that content knowledge? And what evidence? So looking for, there's that section at the bottom where like to tag the evidence, but throughout that narrative, it's nice as you're reading and you're talking about these things that, like, when you say key assessments, you say signature assessments, e.g. lesson plans. Well, it's not really e.g. if you're actually using a lesson plan to document content knowledge, like link to that lesson plan so we can sort of see the piece that explains the content knowledge piece. And you can be super specific. So you can say, on page 1 of the lesson plan is an expectation that students map the lesson to like the Kentucky academic standards for the content, and so that is evidence of their content knowledge, that they can match the lesson and find the related standards, that sort of thing. Like that level of specificity is super helpful. And I'll be quiet so others can jump in.
I absolutely agree with that. If you go down to the next page on that section where it says developmental rubrics, longitudinal data, and clinical evaluation trends, if you can link those, anything you can link that will give us a better picture of where you're at and where you're sitting, will really assist us in making sure that you're exactly where you need to be.
This is my wait time for R12.
So I guess as the lay person on this committee, in kind of going back a question or two to what Jennifer had asked, when we meet next June to vote on accreditation, you don't anticipate having a data cycle that we can review to see the improvement on the areas identified?
This team, and Melissa, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't have my calendar right in front of me. By the time this team meets in June of 2026, I will have this is tricky, one cycle.
So here, Ashley,
Okay,
so with
thank
the
you.
timeline, she has the targeted feedback report. Because it's not a full visit, she'll only address standards 4 and 5 in that targeted report. So she'll have essentially data and stuff on those. in that report, that goes to the site visit team. The site visit team will be there in February to follow up with data, and then they write a recommendation to you all. So you all will have their recommendation. But I think what Ashley is saying, and Ashley, you can correct me, is that I think by the time that they visit in February, you won't necessarily have that first cycle of data. So the review team will have to make a recommendation without that, and then it will go to you all. And I don't know that we've had this before. Let me clarify with Cassie on if we can add additional things after, but I'll clarify that. But did I make it more confusing, Danny?
No, I guess I'm, you know, obviously I don't know as much about this as all of you do. And this is the first time that we've had this come up in this way since I've been on the committee now. Gosh, I don't know, 6 or 7 years. So it's uncharted waters for me. And I'm just thinking, when we meet in June, we have 2 options, I believe. Is that correct?
Yes, in June, the option is either full accreditation, which is then 7 years from that date, or revoke accreditation. Those are the 2 options for the next June. And
Right.
It's a recommendation to EPSB. EPSB is the one that actually makes the
Sure.
final decision.
Sure. I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding and that we were all on the same page of, I hope that everything, that the data is there and that we're able to move forward in that direction. I just wanted to make sure I understood what our decision will be at that time.
And there have been other schools that have been on probation.
Sure.
So yeah, we had one last summer. So, and we can always talk offline about what that process was, or you can go back and look at the June
Sure. Yeah.
stuff for that
No,
school.
I recall the probation. I think it was just the question of whether or not there was going to be data to help us move off of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I have some of the things we do have data for, but they're not in this particular format with Watermark but I can't put it into Watermark, but I can give a separate table or present that in a different fashion. So technically we could have that cycle of data, but if I'm just, whenever they come in February, our students will have put the first time fall classes in, and we will have that set of data. And then when they come in February, the students will have submitted anything at that point. But whenever you guys meet in June, they will have submitted, and I will have data for my second spring semester. So I think it's part of it is a timeline thing, and I think the other part is how it's organized, I guess.
So I think you're going to have to present us with data that's not organized in Watermark, because if you don't, we're going to have to go off recommendations from February, not what you have in June. So that's just something you'll need to consider, because what you present in the SSR and from your site visit. Melissa, am I wrong in that? That's what we're going to consider, is what's been given to us from the visit?
Yeah, so based on previous meetings, I put all of that information into the drive for you guys to look at. And in the past, they were allowed to add like a rejoinder after the team make their decision. Then they could add a rejoinder that just responds to that, but you can't add new data to the rejoinder. I'm thinking through the CAPE rules. And so all of you have done CAPE, so you can jump in and assist me. But I believe that the way that it's typically worked is no additional evidence was allowed to be submitted after that rejoinder. And so, and now I'm getting confused, sorry. Was there a cycle of data from this last spring? Okay. So you have one cycle of data. Okay.
I think part of it is using the word cycle of data. Kind of makes you a little bit nervous, because our cycles are not by semester. It's it will have to be by academic year. If that makes
So do you
any
have
sense.
data for the 25 or the 24-25 school year?
I do in 2 different formats.
Okay.
So
I think that's what Jennifer, Dr. Neal, we've got so many Jennifers. Dr. Neal, that's what you were asking, right? If there was one cycle of data, and even if it was not in watermark, that should be presented, correct?
I believe that would be helpful to support everything that you're doing.
Sorry, Dr. Bay Williams, you were on a certain thing and then
That's okay. No, I mean,
derailed.
this is the nature of the work. It's the big picture stuff and then back to the small picture stuff. So the data is important. And then the other thing that I'm hearing as a theme is just the specificity of what you're actually reporting on. And so, like I'm sure we all see the progress that's been made in terms of the work with Watermark to assess and monitor student progress and the rubrics that you've been developing. So we're seeing progress, but we're trying to let you know that we're on a clock and there's a lot of details that we need to see. So that's what we're trying to do is we're moving out and in to make sure that we're all on the same page about the, expectation and what the information is in an effort to support your work as you're trying to put these things in place. And the people on this call, many of us have been in these situations where we're fighting against the clock to gather the data that we need in order to, meet the deadlines that we're given. So it's with that in mind that we're, providing this feedback, which can be overwhelming, we understand. And on that note of maybe being overwhelming while we're on R12, there, more evidence, I mean, you've heard that connected, but, when you're showing their growth over time, and also when you're talking about their content knowledge, like you say, they take content courses, but you don't say how many or that they're selected or they're specific for teachers or what they are. Like you could just definitely elaborate on what that content preparation is. That could be a program of studies or sample programs of studies. And then when you're talking about that growth over time, if you're assessing, for example, their content knowledge or any of the NTAS standards over time, then just again, that program of studies can help so we can see, or just a semester by semester what their coursework looks like. Like you were saying earlier, Ashley, that they take different courses in the fall than in the spring. So just seeing those courses over those years and seeing how the NTAS standards are assessed over time, that at a glance documentation helps give us that big picture of the monitoring of your candidates. So you've done some work here in getting course assessments to rubrics to analysis. And now it's just giving us that lens to that point in time, that methods that you're pulling. Is that the semester before they student teach? And how does that relate to the next time you're assessing them on that standard, maybe in student teaching, that bird's eye view?
Okay.
Somebody else was, I think, adding something.
I think she accidentally hit the unmute button.
Oh, okay. All right, so let's move into the next category, which is the R13. So what I just said also applies here, by the way, when you're talking about them, so it's their progress. Now, this one's focused on measuring students' progress.
Yes. Definitely a common theme.
And again, here, you haven't attached any evidence here. So you're talking about some things that sound really interesting, but we don't have the opportunity to see what those look like. Like we don't really know what the practica involves or what's being assessed, that sort of thing. Or am I missing it?
No, you're not.
Okay. Okay, committee. Feedback on the standard.
No, I agree. I mean, it's kind of the same kind of make sure those evidence and rubrics and things are attached.
All right, well, we're moving on to the next category around partnerships. That is the one that is R21.
I would say the same thing here as far as specifics, notes from your advisory board meetings and anything you've done. You've talked about partnerships. What exactly are you doing in partnership with the districts that you've done, or you've included your MOAs for?
Like the minutes that you have attached, that sort of evidence, if you like, but you can also tell the story, like, here's an example of the way that this partnership's been mutually beneficial. Our partner, let's say the partners in the school said, hey, our candidates, at say one of your meetings, and it's captured in your minutes, have talked about how candidates are struggling to support students with special needs. And so you end up revising an assignment or infusing something new in a course or doing something like that. Like that's what sort of the golden level of this mutually beneficial partnership is you're coming together and co-constructing things. Reviewing the data, that sort of thing. So, and then from that, something comes out of it that is co-constructed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So you have like the memorandums of understanding, and it sounds like you have some other events. I mean, you talk about other events. We're just asking for more flavor and details there.
Okay.
Anyone else? So R22 is more of the same. It's that evidence of the educators, the clinical and how the clinical educators are engaged, that sort of thing. So you have sort of lists, but we need like the evidence. And this is a question for Melissa. There's through and through these questions about DEI, which now universities can't do. So I don't know if we revise our prompts or what we do about that, but in about 2 weeks, those prompts will not be part of the university required elements.
And I believe those came from CAPE, so I'd have to double check with CAPE on what they decided to do with their stuff.
Right, but as a state review, I mean, that's actually the meeting I was at before I came to this one. That's
Okay.
what we have to have ready, right? So in terms of our state review, we could just, if Ashley's gearing up for CAPE review, they can be there for that purpose, but within the state, we have to make sure it lives within the legislation that goes into effect on July 1. So just sidebar to the team, that's not related to you, Ashley, but we will have to be cognizant of what is and is not permissible.
And I'll clarify that with Cassie as well, so I can
Yep.
make sure we have something stated.
Well, that was a question that I also asked our president of how I should respond. um, not knowing the complete legalities of things, but just know that it's part of the conversation.
Right. I
he's
mean,
our new
those words,
president.
yeah. I mean, my work as Associate Dean of Academic Affairs has been, as educators, we are preparing our candidates to work with all of the students that are going to be coming to their classrooms. They're obligated to make sure all those students have access to, appropriate learning opportunities. And so that's been our focus. And, the name tag you put on that is that which is important, but right now there are trigger words that are misunderstood or understood differently by different people. So, but it is definitely appropriate as we're preparing teachers that they know how to support the range of students that will be in their classroom. That's, I think, pretty straightforward and pretty clear that that's our mission and vision in education at large.
And Jenny, I'll have to get clarification from Cassie too, because I'm thinking about you guys vote on Brush's programs and accreditation, and they're, we can do those separately. But standards 1 and 2 that Ashley's been speaking to throughout her updates for you all are around the programs. But actually, I'm thinking the accreditation stuff, it's targeted, and it's only going to be standards 4 and 5. So I'll clarify whether Ashley will update standards 1 and 2 with you all for programs, because that actually won't be in the accreditation materials. So I'll have to get some clarification on those pieces. So
Okay.
Melissa, will you say that one more time? Okay, so in February, I just want to make sure I understand.
So the accreditation standards are the ones that receive stipulations, are the ones you have to do for a targeted feedback report. So that's standards 4 and 5. But this committee, when they wrote their conditions for program approval, which was separate, the conditions for program approval was to meet standards 1 and 2. So I need to clarify with Cassie, so the accreditation materials would go in based on standards 4 and 5, but then do you get, can you add an additional update on standards 1 and 2? Because those won't be in your accreditation materials. They would be in your, they would be a follow-up. So I'll have to get clarification on that. And when I have that, I will send that to the entire committee and Ashley so that you can see how but I was thinking, as Jenny was talking through, and I realized we're talking about standards 1 and 2 for program approval, but standards 4 and 5 is what we'll see in the accreditation. So I'll get clarification on that.
All right, so any other feedback on R22 that hasn't already been, I know we shared a lot of feedback that applies across all these standards. Is there any R22 specific feedback? How about R23? Okay, then we're back to just global feedback or questions from you, Ashley, just other thoughts to share before we close out the focus on your programs.
No, just whatever your belief is, say prayer.
So okay, I just want to make sure I have my notes. So I'm going to ask Cassie about the DEI questions that show up in this stuff. I'm going to ask her about the if Ashley can provide an update on standards 1 and 2 for the program side of things in that June meeting, and obviously we have the December meeting. So and then you'll have the accreditation standards for 4 and 5. Were there any other questions from anybody that you feel I need to get clarification on regarding regulation statutes, like Cassie-like questions? And if you think of any, feel free to email me. I'm just going to put a meeting together with her, and I just want to make sure that I address everything that you all have.
I have a question for whomever would like to jump in there. Okay, so I have to get my mind straight. The document, the targeted response report that's due in August. Yes, August 13th. Hope that's not a Friday, y'all. Is it probably is, knowing my luck. Like I so want to look now. That is just for February's visit. That is my standard 4 and 5 that has to be met. Okay. All right. Hang on. I got to think it all out. Hang on. Please hold. Okay.
It's a Wednesday, if that makes you feel better.
Well, okay. Perfect. Then I'm taking the rest of that week off. And that's the first week of classes. So congratulations. Okay. So it's 4 and 5 for February. That's the targeted response report that's in my drive. Okay. Their recommendation, the site team's recommendation, will come after all the back and forth stuff, will come to this team.
Correct.
Okay.
So you'll turn in that report, but they will give you a formative feedback report for
Right.
February. So you'll get more information as to what else they need for February. Then you'll have your February on-site. They'll write their, and you'll know when you leave that meeting what their decision will be.
Gotcha.
And then that, but it'll just be a recommendation.
Recommendation.
It's, you know,
Mhm.
and then all of everything that's collected regarding Brescia this year will go to the AAC for review.
Okay. So for standards 1 and 2, I'm going to do it like you can see. You can see me. Actually, forgot. These are the questions that I need to respond to with all the suggestions that I've gotten for the AAC for standards 1 and 2.
So typically the updates, like we've had 3 update meetings last June, last December, this June,
Mhm.
or 4, then we'll have this December. So usually those update meetings is when you present your evidence and demonstrate that you're collecting your data and how you're using it and such in those 4. So typically there's not an update in that next June meeting, it's just the vote.
Okay.
But I think what the team, from what I'm hearing at the team, is that they think there's still a lot of questions regarding the evidence and the data and that sort of thing. So traditionally, December would be the last one that you would address those. But it sounds like you're not going to have more data in December. So,
Okay.
so I don't know if the committee, we're required, according to the conditions, we're required to do an update, you know, every 6 months. I can clarify. I mean, if there's nothing new to report in December, I can clarify whether we have to have the meeting, but I would think we do, because that was the conditions of the
Mhm.
program. But
Okay. I just want to make sure that I understand for what audience, what standard or section that I'm working on. I know all of
And-
it comes to this committee in the end.
and listening to, and all of you on here, committee members, jump in, listening to this, I think it was Dr. Neal that said it, but it sounds to me like in the December meeting, if you could take some of that data that you were saying is not in watermark and
Mhm.
have that. And then I think, to Danny's point, I think that they just really want to hear about that data, that analysis. Committee, can you?
I see
Okay.
lots of
Am I
heads
saying that?
shaking. Yeah.
Does that make sense,
Yeah.
Ashley? Like, I think that's what the
Yes.
committee is asking for. Like, take that data that you have that wasn't submitted with this one, that's like from the previous or whatever, and maybe have that in December,
Right.
along with any watermark. And then, but it will be standards 1 and 2. So you're talking about in December, standards 1 and 2, which you've been working on as you've been doing this stuff.
Yes.
So, but then, yeah, you'll be your targeted feedback report will be the standards 4 and 5, because those were the unmet standards.
Okay.
Am I saying that clearly, or is this clear as mud to everybody?
No. I'm better now. I don't know about the team, but I'm
Yeah.
better.
I think if you have those data in December and you have those data analyzed, even if they're in 2 separate formats, it doesn't matter. You're working toward program improvement. You're working toward doing what is being asked, and then you're linking everything you can in those documents for our next update. And then you're presenting per question whatever you can, then that gives us the evidence that we need. Am I saying that correctly? I believe that's the most coherent way to do it.
And Ashley, it looks like, because you have to submit your report to this committee 2 weeks before the meeting. So based on the fact that we set it on the 9th, it'll probably be November 25th will be when you have to have your materials in, if that helps you think through getting those 2 standards ready.
Okay.
But I would also say, and this is up to the committee, for me, if you have this data and you get it put together and you want to put it in the drive at any time, I'm happy to send the committee a note and say, Ashley's provided some additional things for you to look at when you're ready. They just won't comment on it or give you feedback or talk about it till we're in the meeting. But I feel like anytime you want to put anything in that drive, if you let me know, I'll transfer it in and the AAC can look at it whenever they have a moment, so that, they're not trying to look at everything in that 2 weeks. I think anything ahead of time would be beneficial, but that's just my thoughts.
And I think I have access to go in and just make a copy of that same report. I think.
Dr. Bay Williams, do you anticipate we'll use the same report format, other than I'll go through and look at those questions? Or do you think, or does anybody in the committee think that the report format needs to be changed or updated?
I liked it. It was allowing me to focus in on the standards themselves and to just, I'm a linear person in that way. What's
So
the
I'll
rest
just
of
look
you
at the
think?
guiding questions. Otherwise, we'll use the same format.
All right, sounds like we're good with it. Any suggestions for a new format from the committee? All right, well, Ashley, we can see the work that you're doing and the context in which you are working with changes happening within the program and beyond the program, and working to sort out all of this with your small but mighty team. So continue the work. As you've heard from the questions, we want to see more evidence. We want to see more context, that sort of work. So you definitely have much work ahead, but you have made lots of advances since this process started. So congratulations on that work. Does anybody have any other things they want to offer to Ashley before she signs off?
I think just to clarify the December meeting, and Danny, I think you're the one that brought this up. It might be easier if the presentation, do you guys prefer just for her to go standard by standard and kind of report that way? We'll just go with like 1.1, kind of go through those, and she can just do a presentation that maybe dives a little bit more into the evidence and explains the evidence a little more. And is that more of what we're looking at for the presentation in December? Just want to make sure Ashley knows.
Yeah,
I think that would be very helpful to me.
this was a hard presentation to prepare. I mean, because I didn't know where to what to show, where to start.
Yeah, well, I
Sure.
think you can definitely you can just go here's R11. Here's, the question, the header can be the reflective question that was proposed. And here's, the data that you have or the example you have. And you're just highlighting things that are in the report. You're just picking and choosing the big pieces. I would just dive right in and just focus per standard and, you can give more flavor, like we've put a lot of effort into this one. This one, we already had things in place. This one, we're still working on, you know, that sort of context as you go. All right, well, thank you, Ashley.
Thank you. Melissa, you'll send me a date for December, correct?
Yeah, I'll send a meeting invite to the whole crew. And Ashley, if you're okay, we'll do the same thing. We have a very similar agenda. We have 2 schools that we have to approve their programs, and then it'll be your update. So that's the agenda.
Yeah.
So I will just, if you're okay with it, I'll just text you like I did to jump in.
Yep. I'm
and
pretty
we're good to
flexible.
go.
The name of the game around here.
Okay. And I do think, like I said, if we're with that December 9th dates, then we will have your report will be due to the AAC by end of day on November 25th. So, and it sounds like the evidence is the focus of that report.
Yes.
Okay, thank you all so much. Thank you to our tech team for streaming this for us, and thank you to the committee for being here, and Ashley for presenting, and the KDE team for always jumping on and being a good support. So if anyone needs anything, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, do we need a motion to adjourn? I'm just not sure since we have
Yes.
all the other
So moved.
Robert's rules
Yes,
in
we'll
place
go
at the
ahead.
beginning of the
We'll
meeting.
do that.
Are we ready?
So moved.
I heard a move. Do we have a second?
Second, Kesey.
All right, and all in favor, just leave the meeting, I guess.
Thanks all.
Okay, thanks, Melissa, for leading us.
Thank you, Melissa.
Bye.